welcome to the Segway.
Best thing to happen to you on a Thursday.
That's right. Recording Lakewood. I used to deliver around here. It was good times.
Lakewood, I would live in Lakewood.
Would you live in Lakewood?
Yeah, I was going to say, if it wasn't so far away from everything, I actually love Lakewood a lot.
There's a stipulation, though. You have to be as kind as the person that I parked in front of his yard.
I thought you were going to say you had to be gay.
No, I wasn't going to say that. No, but I pulled in his driveway to turn around, and we made this eye contact. Well, he was wearing sunglasses, but I'm assuming we made eye contact, and he kind of waved, and I waved, and then I parked in front of his house, and he's like, hey, how's your day going? I was like, oh, it's going well. He's like, how's your day going? He's like, it's sunny. And in Northeast Ohio, that's kind of like,
Get the fuck on.
Yeah, that's like finding a $20 bill, I think, on the street if it's a sunny day.
Yeah, you're right. It's rare.
It is sunny. Yeah.
So it's actually a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. I hope it's beautiful when this comes out. So today we are going to be interviewing Jeremy Gage, who created the podcast Roll to Forge.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I knew that.
So it is a tabletop role-playing game. It is, they play role-playing games. He has like a larger group of people that he plays with, but he also plays with his girlfriend, Grace. But it's cool because it's not just like, you're not just listening to them do role-playing games. It's also about like education and the inclusion of that. So it's cool because I know nothing about this.
I know.
So I was kind of nervous jumping into it, but it's fun to listen to. They all seem like really cool people, and I'm excited that we get to have this interview with Jeremy.
Me too. I'm too. I don't got much to add to that.
Good endorsement.
Yeah. I mean, he's a nice guy.
All right, guys. Well, without further ado, let's jump right in, and we are interviewing our Week 3 VIP for April 2020, Jeremy Gage of Roll to Forge. All right, we're here with Jeremy. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
That was the most awkward intro I've ever done because it's right in front of him.
I know. I guess we should have at least asked him to leave the room or something.
It's his house.
Go to the bathroom. Yeah, we are in his place in Lakewood. We don't normally do this.
Addresses. No,
normally we make people come to us. We don't go to them.
Yeah.
This is like great service today.
Yeah, well, we got this thing coming up later, which I'm excited about.
You can say what it is.
Well, we're going to play... Well, Tyler has never played D&D. Well, we're not playing D&D. We're excuse me. Jeremy, what are we playing?
We're going to be playing a game called Dungeon World, which is written by Sega LaTorra and Adam Kobil. It's like D&D light in the layman's
sounds like
term.
D&D off-brand. Like,
it's
like
the
Coke
great
versus
it's
like
the great
Faygo.
value.
It has a lot of... if you're someone who's like heard of D&D on the mainstream, but doesn't want to read the 3 books required to do so.
I have done that, yes.
It has a very simple rule set. It allows you to get really into it and holds a lot of the same tropes that D&D would. So it's like... It's a really good way to segue someone into...
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
It's like English basic for English advanced.
Gotcha.
Oh.
So how come it's not more like well known? Like I've never heard of this, and I've playing Dungeons and Dragons for years.
Part of it is because, or at least my intuition and things that I've seen in the community speak about, is that D&D 5e currently holds the mainstream breadth of marketing and awareness and publication. A lot of these games, at least what our channel is about, is to promote small press or indie publishers and giving them a space to really be out in the open. So the reason you may not have heard of Dungeon World is A, you're not looking it up because you're satisfied with D&D and it satisfies all the things you want to do in tabletop. Or it just doesn't have the same marketing breadth that D&D has. So
Band of Blades, is that how does the campaign and everything work? Like speak as if you're speaking to somebody who has no idea about anything because you are.
Because he does not know a thing.
I don't know anything about it.
Yeah, Band of Blades is essentially a Forged in the Dark game. Forged in the Dark is a name for the system that it uses. So, quick preface, some games, when they are written, can go under OGL, which is Open Gaming License. And the creator will create a system reference document that says, as long as you attribute us in your book, you may use all of our systems and ideas that we use for our game. You just can't use, like, our setting material.
Can you say that but less legally?
That's about as layman's legal as it gets.
Oh man. Okay. But
So, do you create the campaign, or is it based around what they write? Like, how much freedom do you have versus what you have to follow?
So Band of Blades is a very locations-based game, but all of its mechanics are very much written and attached to the fiction. So I am constrained by some, or not necessarily constrained, I could make my own setting and just kind of figure it out, but I don't want to have to manhandle the system that much to make it work. So based on just operating from the book, I operate within its fiction, which is to say it happens in the country of Aldermark, which is very like Germanic inspired to my knowledge. And you have your players play a group called the Legion. They are a bunch of rough and tough mercenaries who are on the outskirts of fighting the undead in this world, and they are constantly being pushed back by their nemesis, the Cinder King, who operates the undead.
Okay.
And it's really a story about military bonds, brothers in arms, fighting against an evil in an uphill battle that you're probably not going to win. It's not really a super hopeful story. The story more operates at an intimate level.
Okay. So,
That's what's
but
kind
you're
of-
more rebellions anyway.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I could see the hope.
that's what's kind of beautiful about these kinds of games is you can manipulate the systems how you need them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it just depends on how much work you want to put in as a GM, DM, director of a game to exploit that stuff.
Which when I was listening, you mentioned this, but I don't remember exactly how you said it. What is your preferred term for the DM, or like because you kind of said how you liked it a certain way.
Depends on the game, right?
Well, it does. Some of the games will call you certain things. There has been a sort of movement to get away from game master, dungeon master, because it kind of puts you in a mental adversarial state sometimes, depending on the person. So I like to use terms like director or leader, just a person who's there to collaborate with, because the story comes from the collaboration of everyone at the table. A lot of times people think the story mainly is the responsibility of the operator of the game, the facilitator of the game, or of the narrative, if you will, the fiction. And I just think it's more about like everyone has a hand in that, and they should have. It's everyone's responsibility to bring story to the table.
So you're thinking of it more of the positive connotation
Yeah.
rather than the master
Yeah.
of the story.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like the you said the
Adversary?
word, yeah, adversary kind of. I mean, I like that mentality because I want to kill them every time I'm the dungeon master.
Well, then you should keep that then.
Yeah,
but
you should hold
that's
the
the
master.
beauty of it.
Yeah.
So let's go a little bit into your background with D&D, and then we'll dive into the podcast.
Sure.
So when did you start playing like these type of tabletop games, and what kind of, from either your personal life or your personality, what brought you to these games?
Also,
and
who brought you into it?
Yeah, and what just kind of made it click where you're like, this is fun, I want to do this?
Sure. So the first time I was ever exposed to it was D&D. I was exposed to a 4th edition book that.
So, to their marketing. Good job, marketing.
yeah,
I
exactly.
heard 4th edition is not awesome.
It was so 4th edition was designed to go along with like a virtual tabletop game board, so it's going to be very tactical, very heavily tactical. But the virtual tabletop portion of it didn't come through, so there's all these actions and powers and abilities and points, and it's a lot of min-max crunch. That is kind of a tradition from 3.5 and 3.0 D&D Pathfinder type things, and then just never kind of came to fruition. So the only reason people don't generally like it is because it was such a stark difference from 3.0 and 3.5, but it's also lands in the realm of traditionalism where like, you know, I've always made my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches this way. The second you add almond butter, that's a travesty to people. You know what I mean? Like,
That's a good analogy.
I want you to answer the question we asked you before, but I want to come back to differences between the versions.
sure.
So
Sure.
answer that first question.
Sure. So I first saw a book when I was 13. It belonged to my godfather, and I read all into it. He only had the player's guide, so I didn't really understand how to run a game, and we never really got through playing a game. Me and my brothers, Caleb and Jason, would always read the book and like come up with crazy characters, but nothing really came to fruition. Fast forward 11 years later, if I'm doing quick math right, about 3 or 4 years ago, my friend Eric Lucas had been running some D&D games for his circle of friends and for his wife. And my brothers were in town. We all came and played our first game together, and that was a good time. So I was like, man, this is really cool. It scratches like an acting itch I've had for a long time. I used to be in an improv group, and that kind of scratched that as well. So, and I love being with people. I love being around people, shared experience stuff. So I started delving deeper and deeper into writing technique, philosophies, fundamentals. Started buying more games to kind of increase my taste, if you will, to expand my taste. And that's kind of the story from there. It's just been 3 years of a hard dive into articles and books and podcasts and shows. I've also been really hip to a show called Critical Role, which is very popular, which is also very like mainstream and helps with that D&D expansion as well. That's the system they use. They started in Pathfinder, but then evolved into D&D for their second campaign. So
I've been trying to convince Tyler forever to play D&D, but I'm glad we finally get to sit down and.
By that he means that he wants me to play. I've never been invited.
That's fucking true. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, it is true.
I actually sit outside. You know the scene in Scott Pilgrim where Chow's outside looking in the window. That's me when y'all are playing. No! I'm just watching and getting wet from the rain, crying. Can't tell I'm crying.
But, no, I tell them all the time it's a good time. But I was because like improv is the main reason why we formed that. Well, not the main. It's one of the reasons why we formed this.
Mm-hmm.
An outlet, yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice because, and you know this because you do this, you podcast, but it's so nice to have a forum where you get to be creative, fun, structure your own way. Mm-hmm. But it's not like, hey guys, come to my event. Come to my event. You put it out and you say, hey, when you want to listen to it, we'll be there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is fantastic.
I mean, there's something to be said about like digital marketing and stuff like that and putting the push. If you,
there's a lot to be said about that.
Real quick.
I keep my secrets to myself.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to jump back into the editions.
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Which is your favorite? What do you think succeeds and what doesn't?
5th edition has been my favorite, but it's also been the one I've mainly been exposed to. I've read books on 3.5. I've read books on 4th edition, but as far as approachability and accessibility to people, the previous versions had been very rules heavy because it's been sort of a telephone game of edition to edition to edition. What do we keep? What do we cut? What do we add? Has been sort of their writing format. And 5th edition has sort of the leanest form of rules, but is still a moderately crunchy game when you get down to it. Lots of math pieces involved. What do you roll for what? All these different dice, especially if you're playing some sort of spellcaster, it can get pretty insane. A lot of people like to think that Wizard is a hard class, but I think Druid is the harder class because you have to keep in mind spells and shape-shifting.
Sorcerer's a crazy class.
Sorcerers are also a crazy class, and they can be moderately underpowered in comparison to the other spellcasters, but given the right min-maxing and optimization, they can kick some ass.
So what do you think succeeds in 5th edition and what maybe doesn't?
As far as success, I think that it is the best way I've heard it explained is that because D&D is so widespread, it's like learning the English language, right? A lot of countries have to learn it, whereas someone who says like I want to take a French class, you get to speak with other French speakers, and you're more apt to find a game in English speaking than finding other French speakers in your region. So as far as that is concerned, it's been a great success. It's brought a lot of people. 2018 was the biggest year for tabletop role-playing games, especially for D&D. And it's really created a renaissance phase for this sort of industry and mode of expression to come into the forefront. What I think D&D doesn't succeed at, and what it kind of fluffs up in a lot of its books, is that it's a very combat-heavy game. A lot of the skills that you use to facilitate acting within the fiction generally only speak to killing stuff and getting better loot, whereas the book often says things to the effect of like it has lots of social pillars and exploratory. We add so many systems for operating with NPCs and operating with the environment. But at the end of the day, your paladin has a divine smite that doesn't work on walls, it works on the undead. So
that is my favorite part of any game, is the combat.
Yeah.
Is the combat, have you ever played a game like Life is Strange or something like that, where it's like you just kind of, there's a little, but you just kind of do? Or The Sims? I mean, people make it.
I was never that into The Sims.
No, that's fair. Hey, you're true to your character. I gotta appreciate that.
Yeah, it's all very genre-based stuff, right? Like D&D is the perfect game for the person that comes from kind of a video game background, because a lot of video games force you to interact with the adversarial components of that game. And like games like Life is Strange or lots of movie-esque or games that just don't operate on an adversarial basis. There may be other games that you are open to that D&D may not scratch that itch for.
I think you'll really enjoy the social aspect of this.
I'm excited to do this. This isn't something I'm being like. Let me say this: I'm not being forced to play this game later. I was never invited. All right, so I got 2 questions for you. Let's start diving into Roll to Forge. It's Roll to Forge, correct?
That is
I
correct.
always want to say Rolls to Forge, but I literally the whole drive here I'm like Roll to Forge, Roll to Forge, Roll to Forge. Okay, so two questions. One, what was your biggest inspiration to start Roll to Forge? And 2, when did the idea pop in your head outside of just playing games with friends? Like, hey, this is the type of content that I think could work in the format and the platform of a podcast.
So Roll to Forge was kind of based on my own selfish personal itch, and I have very great friends that had said, yeah, we'll play with you and we'll be on the internet and everything like that. So I'm very happy to be with them. They've really been a great support system for me. But it's sort of a selfish notion of creativity for me. I love playing games. I always want to play more games. I'm trying to use this as a form to continuously grow this into a portfolio for myself as well, and for the others that are part of this show to be sort of like a director for hire, a DM for hire, so I can facilitate more games for people, because there's such a low supply of people who want to run games because they view it as a terribly hard occupation. And also to facilitate teaching people how to play games and lessening that supply shortage of people who run games. So that was part of it, both to educate people, to get them to start running their own games, to entertain them with shows, to scratch that creative itch. And then the other part of it of why I wanted to do it, and I think this answers what I was thinking for the second question, there is... as with all things in America currently, is it's very white driven in most industries, white male driven in most industries. There are a lot of gender fluid cultures and people of color cultures that are creating games, running games, playing games, and they are not, me myself being African American to the most extent, hybrid child. While I do have certain privileges in passing, I'm a very light-skinned person, which you may not be seeing on the podcast, but I'm also not wearing clothes currently, so
That's true.
they came to me and told me they did this full naked, and I said, why not? So
That, not to interrupt you, but that's a really good point, because I like my D&D or tabletop experience is very low, but when I do think of it, I think of Geek and Sundry, Felicia Day, and,
sure.
Will
Absolutely.
Wheaton, who
Yeah,
are
absolutely.
all white.
Yeah, absolutely.
White male. I mean, like, look at us right now.
Well,
What are we-
Felicia's not a white male, but I guess I don't know that for a fact, from what I've seen.
Yeah, I guess so.
But it's really about increasing the amount of inclusion, and a lot of channels often have the same groups play the games all throughout their channel, which creates a lot of familiarity for people. But I am looking eventually to start to add other people who have interests or are interested, especially those that are gender fluid or people of color. I want to try and show that there are people creating. I'd like to interview with creators of games who are of a different perspective. It's all about different perspectives, what it boils down to.
Well,
Right?
you nailed it right on the head with me and Charlie.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
job.
we hate those white males.
But no, the biggest proponent of why I created it and why I want to continue going forward is that I eventually want to build the inclusion part into this and showcase people who are not showcased.
So why podcast? Because you do YouTube as well, and why include the podcast factor in it rather than just make it strictly a YouTube channel?
It's all about accessibility and reach. At the end of the day, it's not something hard to do. I have a system that allows me to both render in video and in audio at the same time, so that's pretty choice. And then I just upload.
Does the saturation of a market scare you at all?
Not at all.
All right.
At least he has a market.
Yeah,
you have a niche. You know who exactly who to target. Like
Yeah.
when you were saying like you go on Twitter and you talk on, well, not on here, but you were saying you go on Twitter and you make talk to people there and build kind of networking. It's really difficult for Charlie and I to do for the segue because It's like our struggle is, well, yeah, you might like our food reviews, but why would that automatically assume that you either like our movie reviews or our paranormal discussions?
Right,
Like
right.
we have such a wide band reach
Spread of content.
that it's hard. The ultimate goal is to hope that, eventually they kind of get used to it. They like us as people, and they kind of like the topics that we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a safe way to start anything. You typically want to be very specific, very
Niched.
targeted.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the biggest thing right now I would say is probably true crime. Do you agree?
Yes.
Do you agree? But it's nice because you know exactly what kind of people to target. You know what their interests are. You know exactly where to find them. Where us is kind of just like, it's a little bit more difficult. So I envy you in that, but not like obviously we could have chose to be more targeted. We just didn't.
Do you have a favorite game?
Currently, I love the Forged in the Dark system. The game we're playing, Band of Blades, in addition to a lot of the other standalone titles that are coming up or that are out. There's Blades in the Dark. There's Girls by Moonlight, which is coming out, which is Sailor Moon inspired, which will be very cool. And then there's Scum and Villainy, which is very like Firefly or Star Wars-esque inspired. But they all operate on the same dice system.
So that would have got Tyler's attention.
Yeah, but I'm just excited to be here. It's very nice to be invited to play.
Oh my god. Anyway, so what's one of your favorite times running a campaign and favorite times playing a campaign?
For me, those are kind of the same question.
Okay, that's fine.
In terms of that, every new game is really fun for me, and the ability to explore a different genre, to explore different mechanics and how they interact with the fiction. Again, like I said earlier, it's all about like building up my taste. And what I love about the current game that I'm running is that it's very outside the scope of anything I've played before. D&D is very much a game about being a hero, taking down very large adversaries, and challenging evil. You can run evil campaigns in a D&D game. Those don't always fly super well without the proper safety mechanisms. But I love being exposed. There'll be a Scum and Villainy game that'll happen at some point, which is that sci-fi genre type one that'll be run hopefully by our collaborator Luke Brett. He loves the sci-fi genre, big robots, big guns, all of it. The laser gun. I'm here for the laser guns. This is his trademark slogan. It's really this current game just allows me to tap into the horror genre, which I love a lot, but it's a hard genre to facilitate in a tabletop playing space. You don't have the access to audio cues or jump scares or cutaways. You have to be very dynamic in your narration, the words you use, and how you kind of create those mental images for people at the table.
I would love to do a horror one. That would be absolutely fantastic.
Like a Left 4 Dead version.
Yeah, the game that we played, the House on the Haunted Hill. But it's not Haunted Hill House. Yeah, but what was the name of the game? Betrayal. It's like Betrayal on that game. I didn't love that game, but there was a certain level of like B-rated horror movie vibe that you got from it.
Absolutely.
And if I were to do a D&D campaign on my own and I got to choose, everything, I think more in the vein of that type of game, I think would be really fun.
There are lots of people trying to experiment with the horror genre in the space, at least recently. There's a game that just kind of popped up called 10 Candles, where you play at night. You turn off all the lights in the house and you light 10 candles, and you go throughout the fiction and its mechanics, and as you fail in certain mechanics, you snuff a candle, and when the last candle is snuffed, you're in complete darkness and you die. There's another game.
That's amazing.
Yeah. There's another game out there called Quiet Us, which is based on those like Paranormal Activity movies. It's kind of like a melodrama. You play a family or a group of friends and stuck in a house, and you're haunted by this thing, and it uses mechanics and fiction to kind of explore that.
That sounds super fun.
Yeah. So if those are up your alley, I would highly recommend them.
We definitely need to re-collaborate and do the 10 Candles. Look into it a little bit. And
lighting might be hard, but
do you have a favorite moment in a game that you can remember that you liked?
He had to breathe in deep.
I know, right?
All the oxygen.
He's like,
Yes,
you were
question.
fucking trying me.
There's a lot of experiences that I love. Actually, there was a home game that I was playing that was D&D 5e. It was the Dragon Heist Adventure, and we were playing to... There's a moment where Grace's character, Skamos, Grace is usually a little bit more of a take-in type player. There are different types of players that you'll learn about as you play games, but she is the one that kind of like sits, observes, and then reacts in like specific moments. And there was this one moment where they were her character had carried around this briefcase for a long time. She just wanted a character with a briefcase. She didn't care what was inside of it. And she left that to my denomination. So sometimes through player buy-in, you get to have this conversation. They say, hey, I want a secret about my character. When you reveal it, cool. I was like, okay, cool. So she played a tiefling, barbarian, which if unfamiliar, tieflings are kind of this half-devil humanoid that you get to play as. And she takes the briefcase up to one of the rooms in their house, and she sits down and finally like opens up. She knows that she's supposed to be collecting souls for something. She just doesn't know what. Opens up, giant typhoon of swirling, screeching ghost entities come spilling out of the suitcase. It's like this whole other dimension in there. She peers in and she sees these two flaming red eyes that just stare back at her and say, welcome, my child. What do you need? What do you deal in? And just the surprise on all their faces was very cool. So I love moments like that. I love when you hit them with some sort of subversion that they don't expect. Tiny suitcase, giant pocket dimension.
That's fun.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick pause for this speed round, and then we'll jump right back into the podcast questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready? All right, this is speed, so you gotta don't think too hard. Just do it.
Sure.
All right, favorite movie.
Socks.
Favorite.
He was ready to go with it. He's like, I'm cool with that. Let's move on. No, really, a favorite movie.
Okay. Scott Pilgrim.
Favorite video game.
Favorite video game is Hollow Knight.
Favorite TV show.
Favorite TV show is Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Favorite book.
Favorite book is Mistborn.
Favorite musical artist.
Anderson .Paak.
Apple or Mac?
Apple. Wait,
That's
they're
the
the same
same
thing.
I do the same. I do that all the time. Apple or
Mac.
Microsoft?
Apple.
Light brown or beige?
Beige.
Blue or green?
Blue.
Favorite water temperature.
Oh, definitely like 64.
Okay.
Winter or summer?
Winter.
Favorite department store.
Oh, got Target.
Spring or fall?
Fall.
All right. Favorite hobby outside of D&D and all this stuff.
Oh.
I don't have hobbies. I don't sleep.
Writing.
Right. That's
Game,
right.
game design.
You did NaNoWriMo.
Yeah.
How did that go?
Whoa.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it.
All right. This is the last one, Charlie.
All right. Bow, axe, or sword?
Bow.
Okay.
All right. NaNoWriMo.
Are you happy now?
I'm
you
happy
got
now.
that information?
I was like, I'm
Can
sitting
you go-
on this one. I got gold.
So how did NaNoWriMo go?
Got to 30,000 words. Or no, well, I got to 50,000 words over 3 projects. So I wrote some short story things. I worked on some game design stuff and some narrative design things. So yeah, it went well. I accomplished my 50,000 goal, which is the idea for NaNoWriMo. The true principle behind it is that you write every day, but that's also not, if you think about like a person in an actual career of writing, that's not like facilitatable because you have weekends, you need to spend time with people. You're not necessarily writing every day. You're more
The
like
people
writing.
that tell you that are like Stephen King, who
Yeah.
can live off of it, and they're fine.
Yeah.
And he said write 10,000 words each day.
Yeah.
I don't even think 10,000 words each day.
That's really good. So here's my question for you, because you mentioned this. I mentioned this before with James Renner, but I want to say it again now. So you like the social aspect of being a director and playing games. How do you personally deal with like, okay, I have to write, or I want to write. This is me alone for hours sitting in front of a computer doing this by myself. That is something, because I'm very similar. I relate when you're talking about being a director and collaborating. That's why, I wouldn't want to do a podcast on my own. Sure. I wouldn't want to do that. I like collaborating with Charlie. So many of my social projects are collaborative efforts with many people. But when it comes to writing, it's a you alone doing this by yourself. Do you ever have issues with that, or how do you handle that situation?
I think that for that sort of thinking, that applies more to novels, and that's true. It's hard. It's hard because people sometimes don't understand or tune out the things that you're trying to express to them when it comes to your novel. You understand your setting and your characters and the plot in your brain 100-fold over, but when you try to spill it out while it's in its infant stages, it's really hard to get people to attached to those things. People love stories. People will always love stories. That's just how human beings work. But as far as developing now that's not to say that if you get someone like a developmental editor or someone looking over your work to help you with edits, that's where the collaboration comes in. But sort of that baking thing, it can be a very solitary experience. And I think how when I did NaNoWriMo and started my writing journey trying to do a novel, it was hard. It's hard to have your partner talk about it with you because they may have different interests, or they may not have the vocabulary to understand the things you want to say, and you don't want to be long-winded about it.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to come up with an elevator pitch.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with an elevator pitch in the nuanced infancy of a project, for sure. But when it comes to writing for game design or writing narrative design and applying it to tabletop games, it's not as difficult for me because it's still, even when there's no one around, you're still in constant collaboration with your players, because you have to take the things that they left you off with. They give you the prompts for all the stuff you're going to write. So it's like they're issuing the challenge and you're trying to meet that challenge, as far as I see it.
Yeah.
When someone goes, I want a dead father as one of my background stories, and I have to find a way to facilitate that. And that can sometimes be a struggle if you're not communicating properly with your player. But if you have that beautiful shared experience, collaboration with people, I don't think it's necessarily that hard or that lonely. It's almost always like their spirit is always holding your hand. Or
I love that component of like a give and a take aspect. When you were deciding that you were going to turn it into a podcast, what are some of the struggles that you foresaw, and how did you kind of tackle those, if you had any?
Definitely entertainment. It's just about, well, the initial fear was entertainment. It's like, will people listen to this? Will they find it interesting? Because at some point, as anyone else is doing something creative, and I totally believe this, if you're doing something creative, you should always be making your money, because you're putting time, you're putting effort, you're constantly growing your skill. You should always be making money no matter what you're doing, even if you're just starting out.
Well, we missed that boat.
No, there's still always opportunities for that. No one's ever missed their boat. It's just about having the courage to say, I am worth something. I am worth being able to, if people are enjoying this and they want more from me, then there has to be a way for me to continue to do that and better that, and not be distracted by my 9 to 5, or not struggling living paycheck to paycheck.
Do you have a Patreon?
Yes, we do have a Patreon. It currently doesn't have any content on it, just because I don't have a current idea of what that content could be that that patrons could pay for, that they're not already getting. I don't want to make someone pay for free content.
Right.
So we also have a Ko-fi where you can give donations and stuff as well. I'm going to be putting up our Venmo too, so like that's a thing.
Yeah.
But it's all by choice, and for anyone that donates, I really appreciate it, and it allows us to find a way to create better content more often.
So your biggest struggle was, how do we make this entertaining?
Sure. Yeah. And yes. And then the initial struggle kind of just wiped away, because I think the thing that's most important to me, as far as the entertainment aspect, is that regardless if it's entertaining to someone else, I want the people who I am playing with to be entertained. And I think that it's the same thing as if you have any sort of work environment. If you have a happy crew, if you have a happy staff, then all of your guests will be happy as well.
Man, I've never had to worry about that. I don't give a fuck about trying.
Yeah, no. I'm a generally pretty happy guy anyway, so
Yeah,
like it's hard. Like you step on my foot.
I know I do worry about you, because sometimes I can tell you're crabby, and I tell you to watch funny videos before we start recording.
That's
so
happened a couple times.
Yeah, I do. So I do care about him very much. Even though, you know what? I don't know if I said this or not. He's never invited me to a D&D.
I don't
so
think
apparently
I've said that before, yeah.
The caring isn't reciprocal, but
Fuck you.
Love each other. But yeah, it's that fear quickly went away once I decided that what's most important is that my job is to facilitate the table, not to facilitate the internet. I make sure that they're having fun, and then hopefully, because they're having fun, the people who view are having fun as well.
So that makes me lead into this next question. So since you kind of shifted to, instead of worrying about the internet, you're worrying about the people playing the game. When the camera's rolling and the mic's on, do you consider the listener, whoever's listening at home on the internet, are they a silent observer of the game, or do you consider them somebody included in the game?
Currently it's a silent observer. I would love to find a way to communicate. Well, I always want engagement. It's all social shared experience is all about the conversation. What we're doing right now is having a conversation. There's no one side about it. And for now it is silent observer, but I always welcome comments, feedback. I was telling Tyler earlier that we got our first YouTube comment on our videos, and they said turn the volume up, and I said, great, man. Someone's got to tell me because I didn't hear it. So
like an interactive Twitch stream. Could you do that?
Unfortunately, no, because if I care about the people at the table, I can't be there typing,
right?
Like commenting.
Like,
to people.
wait, hold that turn. Or I don't know if it's a turn, but I gotta respond to
sure.
Yeah.
Crash Bandicoot 54.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Okay, well, yeah,
it breaks up pacing and things like that. It's something we've considered. It's something that could happen if, there are moderators on Twitch, Mixer and things, and blah, blah, blah. And
if you
having other people do it. Right?
If you did bring somebody along to be on the computer while you did it, that'd be kind of cool.
That would be kind of, but it's also a thing like I feel like for those sorts of things, that has to be its own entity. It's not something me or the crew can interact with, right? It's something so the best example is Critical Role. They don't engage while they are playing games with people. It's always after the fact or before the fact or something to that effect. During the game, the community is speaking with each other. They're all reacting to the movie they're watching, the show they're watching, right? Like, oh, I can't believe that happened, or oh my god, why would you do that, or stop fucking up that rule, Matt. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna need you to purchase a ticket for this train of thought I'm gonna have.
Sure.
Do you remember Pokemon? You know Pokemon?
Yeah, absolutely.
You remember that Twitch stream where they had like all those commenters putting in different interfaces?
I'm not familiar. No.
Wait, here, let me punch your ticket.
Yeah. here we go.
Okay, so there was like this Twitch stream where they had a Pokemon game going. It was like the classic one, and everyone watching was able to input code or commands. Mm-hmm. And it followed the latest command that was, and there were thousands.
Sure.
And crazy stuff happened. It was amazing.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it's the one where like they all had controls of different buttons, and it would go in sequence. Yeah.
That would be ridiculous.
That would be absolutely ridiculous.
Okay.
And that's also something I don't want.
No, I wouldn't either. Yeah. But that was just I was thinking of an example of how that could go off the rails.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially for a D&D campaign.
Yeah, it's definitely the people who feel like they know the system better than you, or feel like this is the direction they want the story to go.
Yes, exactly.
That can be very dangerous stuff, and it can make the table experience very raw and not...
it would become a battle of wills rather than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're fighting with your audience.
So what type of precautions... Well, that's kind of a weird way of framing it. I'll say it, though. What type of precautions do you take when you start creating the content and you're thinking beyond the table? All right, what if somebody who's never played before stumbles upon this content? Are they going to understand what we're saying? Do you kind of formulate the content to appeal to somebody who's never played? Or is it kind of like, for the intermediate player or above to understand the content you're creating?
At some point, I will create a video that kind of explains the system we're playing. But even in-game, especially for the players, this is their first Band of Blades game ever, and mine running it as well, and I go over rules over the course of the game when they come up. So yeah, I don't remember what this does. Oh, this means this, right? So as they're learning, the audience is learning as well.
Okay.
Do you ever put those words on the screen too, or no?
As far as the capacity of me being video editor and game writer, no. Currently,
okay.
no.
It
is
is
something I've thought about.
Wondering.
I did think about that too, because first of all, I love the intro on YouTube.
Yeah.
Like the sound effects. And what are those, the drawings that come up?
Those are in the book.
Okay, gotcha. Because those are fantastic. I'm like, if he's drawing these, or Grace, okay, don't be offended. I assume Grace was drawing.
No, that's fine. I'd assume too.
But I was like, this is fantastic. But then when they were reading their cards, I thought the same thing. I'm like, if these words show up on the screen, like if you're using like iMovie or something,
yeah.
that I think going forward. But I mean, that is a huge time commitment.
Yeah, it's a lot to build, and it sucks up a lot of processing power for my particular computer.
Yeah.
So just for ease of things, it'll be better to facilitate a single video that kind of encompasses the general rules.
Right.
And have them be like, hey, here's the primer to the system. Watch this before you watch the show, or follow along if you need to. But I think because most of these games are very story, TV show type viewed, then it is it's not necessarily super hard to follow along. At some point, all you really need to know is that the system says when you roll a 1 to 3, you fail. When you roll a 4 or 5, you partially succeed. And when you roll a 6, you succeed. And then that's it. Everything else is just like, I get to do these things because my character says so.
Have you considered, even if you record in large chunks, to snip it down so each episode's only like 30 minutes, which might make it easier to edit, and then even though you record a chunk in one time, you can kind of space it out. So you're like, okay, I got the next 3 weeks of content from this one shooting. Because I know some of the episodes, like the first one, I think the first episode, or one of them's like 3 hours.
Yes.
It's like, oh, damn. Like, all right, I better get myself stretch a little bit.
So the first one was just kind of a trial of love type thing for sure, as far as like length goes.
Yeah.
And to answer your question about breaking them up, I could certainly break them up in the half-hour components, but most of our games run a minimum of 3 hours. So to do that would mean that I have a 6-part single episode in a series that also has... So it just becomes very engorged with videos, right?
But if you did like 45 minutes and then maybe the last one was a little bit off, like what if each month was a campaign? So you guys play a 3-hour campaign and you break that up into 4 videos so that you have a whole month of content, and then the next month is a new campaign, or so on.
Most of that comes from wanting to put a little bit more out there as far as like, I don't feel it very rewarding. There are people who watch Critical Role that binge the whole 4 hours in a single day, right?
I've done that.
So if I only make one session episode be a month, I'm only making 12 episodes. We only get through one campaign. So, on a long scope, I could have 4 years worth of content, sure, but it just feels very long for me, and that's not something I would want for my audience.
Gotcha.
So to facilitate being able to do one episode a week is what I would like to do, are my goals. And if that means that I can't put as much editing work as I want to into it, I think that's okay for me. That's where my kind of like values line is drawn.
Gotcha.
Is giving more with a little bit of less.
Gotcha. Because that's one thing I've considered, and I haven't been able to find the statistic, but it's like, because some of our episodes have been pushing, like we try to stay around the 45 to 50 minute range. Like a lot of podcasts try and stay the commute range for like 20, 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
But it's like, I haven't been able to find it. I think Apple will show you this, the iTunes Connect, but I'd love to know when people peace out.
Yeah.
Because I saw it one time. I think it's iTunes Connect, but it'll be like, hey, this episode's 50 minutes. Most people lasted 35.
Sure.
It'd be amazing to see when people start. Yeah. Kind of, so going forward, you're like, okay, it seems like people want 35-minute episodes, or maybe they're listening to the whole thing and they're like, wow, maybe I could go longer.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's definitely something, we get the YouTube analytics that show us that kind of stuff for the video specifically.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think Anchor shows us how many views and watches we get, but it doesn't display duration of listen time. There may be, if someone wants to put a comment here and tell me otherwise, but I haven't found it. And so far, as far as what that tells me, is that either people are checking out because it's not something they're interested in, or as far as my particular form of content, it's just not something that I think if you're in it, if you're into that sort of stuff, you'll watch it. There's no questions asked about it. Some of it can be long. Our Ironsworn games are single sessions that are in an hour. Yeah. So I guess by that,
that's you and Grace, correct?
Yeah, that's me and Grace. Yeah. So I guess we're giving both. We're giving both like the long form. I'm air quoting here. Long form tabletop versions, which are 2 to 4 hours, and then the short versions which are like an hour. And I try to facilitate also that hour by breaking up the longer session episodes into hour chunks.
Gotcha.
Because most people will spend like an hour watching a show, right? Like most Amazon Prime, Netflix shows are about 45 minutes to an hour long. So that's what I'm facilitating, basically.
So I want to ask you one more game question.
Hit me with it.
So what is your favorite race / class for the 5th edition?
I am a guy that makes thousands of characters every second of the day in my mind. Every second, literally.
He's created 500 since we started this episode.
That's not a joke. I would say that my favorite class that I usually do, it's hard to say one out of these two. I usually play cleric or paladins because they have a lot of baked in sort of player buy-in / world narrative pieces. So like when you play a cleric, you have to have something to say about gods and power and all of that, and religion and all of that sort of tropiness, and then paladins are very much about authority. So it's all about how do you act with society, how do you interact with society, and what is your stance, what are your moral values. It forces you to do those things. When you play like a barbarian or a rogue or a wizard, those are kind of amorphous and maybe already spoken for. So class-wise, I would say either one of those two. And then as far as races go, I always like the monstrous races. So I usually tend to go towards like half-orc, or sometimes I'll do like a yuan-ti, or I'll do just something very bestial.
For the layman, what is a yuan-ti?
Yuan-ti is a snake person. They can be different combinations of snake plus person. You can have a snake head and a person body. You can have a snake head, a human torso, and a snake tail. You can have 5 snake heads and a human body. You can.
I'm layman, so this is perfect. I appreciate this.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you decided to do the podcast, first of all, Roll to Forge, what made you come up with that name and using 2 instead of 2?
Yeah, so...
like, is it like rolling?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Really, though?
Yeah, it's double entendre type stuff. So the roll is spelt theater roll, so it's your roll to forge. But the idea is that it's your roll to forge in the world is what I want the name to mean. As far as, like, marketing things, not a very good name, because when you say, like, go to Roll to Forge... oh, you mean like T-O? Like T-O-O? Like T-W-O? I'm like, oh, Jesus, no, the actual number, so...
Dude, we got a dash in our name.
Yeah.
However bad you think yours is in terms of SEO,
We done fucked up more.
Yeah, we done, because Google just instantly like, oh, did you mean the segue without a dash, which is actually a podcast, which isn't us?
No,
Yeah.
it's
like, no.
It's 2 gals. We gotta get in touch with them.
I know, be like, could you guys just, can you just stop? You haven't uploaded since November of last year, but you're still ranking us, even though I get paid for a living to do this. So, what made you land on Anchor as your platform? Did you do any research, or did Anchor come to you, or you see Anchor and you're just like, this looks awesome?
Partly half of both. It was like, did a tiny bit of research, and I was between either using that or just finding like an individual system to use. But I was more concerned about reach, and I didn't want to work that hard for it. So what Anchor does is it will self-distribute along my RSS feed. So we're on like 9 different podcasts right now, or podcast services.
Like Apple, Spotify, Stitcher,
absolutely.
on.
And if those are the ones that people are going to use, then I mean, I might as well. If it's going to give me the least, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't give me a lot of analytical tools, which is fine. Maybe I can find that stuff in the individual platforms, but it was just like an ease type thing, and it allows for some
payment.
Some payment right out
money
the gate.
though.
Yeah, money right out the gate. So that's pretty nice. They help forward to you different sponsorship opportunities, people who want to put ads and things, and if you niche with someone, as you get more views, they will start offering more sponsorships.
Do they send you, because you read something at the beginning of your episode?
Yes.
Do they send you that word for word, or how does that work?
They send you bullet points, and then you kind of craft the script.
That's cool.
As long as you hit the main points that they want and you don't say like anything atrocious on there, I'm sure it's fine.
Does anybody moderate that? How would they know?
They probably don't. It's not moderated currently, as far as I know. I don't think anyone's come to me like, "Hey, I didn't like what you said," but I like to be a professional. So.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But I have the same thoughts. Like, who's like spouting out the multiple curse words on Anchor? Like, fuck Anchor.
Yeah, I will say though.
Anchor
I said it before we started, so I feel like I should say it now. You have really good charisma for podcasting. I don't know if you remember this. I'm gonna say this quick story before we get back to you, because this is also about me. I remember in high school, because we went to high school together.
Yes.
I don't know if Charlie knew that.
Yeah, me and Tyler went to high school
I
together.
assumed. So.
You assumed?
I did.
You two
You
guys
know
from
each other.
Ashtabula, they probably,
Yeah. Dang.
But you were teaching my theater class about improv, and you had us peel oranges, and you complimented my orange peeling, and it stuck with me. And I was like,
Changed your life.
Maybe I could do this thing. It's like I have peeled an orange before, but never a fake orange.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment?
Absolutely.
Even if you're lying, I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. I remember coming in those days, and it was something when I wanted to be an actor, when I wanted to be an acting teacher. It was something that I wanted to try and do, so why not?
Yeah. It stuck with me, though. I feel like, because there's really random moments. Charlie likes to remind me of a time where I was eating an apple.
I'll never forget this fucking apple.
I just said, what did I say?
Said, you look, I remember because he wrecked my life. He looked at me and he goes, I don't think I'll remember this apple. And now I think about that apple every day. Every fucking day. I'm like, that apple came from that apple tree and Tyler ate it.
It is interesting, though, because there's so many things where it's like, unless you make a point in your mind to remember it, it's not going to be remembered. But like, maybe it's a fruit thing, because you remember the apple and I remember the orange. Are there any fruits you remember vividly in your past?
One pear in Monaco.
Not particular, no.
Not you haven't hit your fruit yet, then.
Yeah, I haven't found my fruit.
It's gonna happen. All right. So what are some goals that you have for Roll to Forge going into the future, going into 2020 further?
Obviously growth. I would love more people to watch and listen to us, but that's kind of on us, not them. I would love to start...
they'll meet you halfway.
Yeah.
You can't force them at gunpoint. How's the audio sound?
I definitely want to start doing interviews with people that are willing, like other game designers and narrative designers, other game facilitators and players that fit the mode of being gender fluid, of being people of color, and really trying to give them another space to share their story and their perspective in the industry.
Awesome. Well, hey, throw us some plugs, man. Where can people find you? Where can people find your podcast?
If you want to find the podcast and YouTube stuff, you can talk to us on Twitter at Roll to Forge. That is Roll, ROLE, number 2, FORGE. And you can talk to me personally at Jeremy Gage 5 on Twitter for narrative design and game design things. I'm currently working on writing a game. It's a Forge in the Dark system. And then if you want to donate and support us, you can go to our coffee.com/roll2forge, same spelling. You can also go to our Patreon and just freely donate. I don't have any content on there, so I don't know why you would, but I'm putting it out there in case someone's like, yeah, I'll donate $5 a month for
maybe
nothing.
when this drops in April, maybe there'll be something.
Yeah,
a little bit of a time frame there for you, but
yeah, it's fine. Whenever I get money, I get money. It's chill. But for now, I'm just creating because I love it. And I don't think... And then you can find some of our players on different platforms. You can find Delaney Haggy on Instagram. You can find Grace Kildew on Twitter and Instagram. She's an artist. Please follow and buy her stuff. And then Tyler Collins is also on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find Luke Brett on Twitter as well.
Awesome. And we will be doing a video. So the second part of this collab outside of this interview is Charlie and I and 2 other people that have been mentioned or somehow involved with Segway Podcast. I mean, playing a game. And Jeremy here is going to be our director in his terms. And in Charlie's terms, our master.
I'm really excited.
It'll be fun.
I am also excited.
So please check Roll to Forge YouTube or the Segway Podcast YouTube. And that'll be up there. We'll be sharing links for that as well. But hey, man, we appreciate you being on the podcast. We appreciate you letting us come to your place. Normally I say come in here and be on the podcast, but we came there and we're on the podcast. But most importantly, I really appreciate that you invited me because that's never happened before.
No, it was a pleasure to be on here. And it's the first one I've done, so you get my first interview, and hopefully I make it big and say you knew me first. And thanks for facilitating coming all the way out here. I know it's not something you regularly do, so...
All right, so that is our interview with Jeremy Gage of Roll to Forge, numerical 2.
What a fun I don't get to talk D&D very much. I thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I never get to talk it because
I hate you.
Never invited.
So as always, guys, please subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Hit us with that 5 stars. Charlie doesn't let me say 4 stars anymore. So even if you think it's 4, embellish and give us a 5.
That's right. You got to lie a little bit.
A little bit. We lie all the time, so you guys can lie a little bit. So we appreciate you guys listening. We appreciate Jeremy coming on. As always, this is The Segway.
The best thing to happen to you on a Thursday. My mama says closed mouths don't get fed, so it's always worth a shot to ask.
That's a good motto.
That is a really good motto. I'm going to get that tattooed on me.
Right on my butt cheeks.
I hope that they can hear the birds in the background. It's very peaceful.
I'm probably going to cut them out, dude.
No, keep the birds, bro.
It's going to be noise reduced.